pause everything you are doing right now, because what is unfolding around XRP at this exact moment is not normal, not random, and definitely not being explained honestly by mainstream crypto media. And if you blink, you will miss what could be the most aggressively manipulated and strategically positioned moment in the history of the Ripple ecosystem. Because while headlines scream uncertainty and fear, the smart money is quietly circling. Liquidity is shifting in ways that do not happen by accident. And the same institutions that mocked XRP for years are suddenly name-checking Ripple behind closed doors. And you need to understand why this market uncertainty has XRP in focus like a laser right now. Because this is the phase where weak hands get shaken out and future narratives are born. And I am telling you straight up, this changes everything if you know what to look for. Ask yourself this extreme question: why during peak macro chaos with rates, wars, ETFs, and regulatory confusion, does XRP refuse to disappear? Why does it stay relevant when thousands of other tokens bleed into irrelevance? And why do entities linked to the SEC, IMF, BIS, and even BlackRock keep popping up in adjacent conversations around tokenized liquidity, cross-border settlement, and on-chain infrastructure? WTF is really going on here? Because this is not coincidence, this is positioning. Market uncertainty is not a threat to XRP. It is the environment XRP was literally designed for. Volatility, fractured systems, slow legacy rails, regulatory pressure. This is where Ripple thrives. And while retail is distracted by daily candles, insiders are watching plumbing level changes, settlement corridors, liquidity pools, and regulatory language shifts that most people are not even aware exist. And before we go any further, if you want access to this kind of unfiltered, no-nonsense XRP intelligence that cuts through the fear campaigns and algorithm-driven narratives, you need to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications right now. Because what we are tracking here is not hype, it is structural. And once it becomes obvious, it will already be too late to position calmly. Understand this: when markets become uncertain, power consolidates, and historically power consolidates around infrastructure, not memes, not narratives, infrastructure. And XRP sits at the uncomfortable intersection of banks, regulators, and global liquidity, which is exactly why it is constantly attacked, delayed, and misrepresented. People keep asking why XRP price looks suppressed, why sentiment feels off, why news always sounds vague and ominous. And the answer is simple and terrifying. Uncertainty is a weapon, and it is being used to keep you confused while the rules are quietly rewritten. Today we are going to set the stage, expose why XRP is suddenly back in focus during one of the most unstable macro environments in recent history, and prepare you for the data, the authority figures, and the catalysts that most people will not connect until after the move has already happened. This is not financial advice, this is situational awareness. And if you are still here listening, it means you already sense something is coming, something big, something disruptive, something that will make people say, "I wish I had paid attention when the signs were everywhere." Now that the emotional noise is stripped away, we move into the layer that really rattles cages, the data points, the authority signals, and the quiet confirmations that XRP is not just surviving this market uncertainty, but being studied, stress-tested, and positioned by entities that do not gamble, because smart money does not react to price. It reacts to structure, and the structure around XRP has been getting louder while the media pretends nothing is happening. Look at the regulatory chessboard for a second. The SEC case was never just about Ripple, it was about jurisdiction, control, and who gets to define what digital liquidity actually is. And the moment you understand that, you realize why the outcome mattered globally. Because while the SEC was making noise, institutions like the IMF, World Bank, and BIS were publishing papers openly discussing tokenized assets, cross-border settlement, and instant liquidity rails. And guess whose technology model keeps matching those requirements again and again? Yes, Ripple, yes, XRP, and no, that is not an accident. People laughed when Ripple executives kept name-dropping central banks, but suddenly, pilot programs, CBDC sandboxes, and on-demand liquidity corridors start appearing in regions tied to Ripple partnerships. And now banks that once dismissed crypto are quietly experimenting with tokenization, while BlackRock openly talks about the future of tokenized funds and blockchain-based settlement. And you are supposed to believe XRP has no role here, really. Think about that logically. On-chain data adds another uncomfortable layer, because during periods of extreme uncertainty, XRP wallet distribution shows accumulation patterns that do not match retail panic behavior. Large holders are not fleeing, they are consolidating. Transaction volumes remain stubbornly relevant, and liquidity does not evaporate the way it does with speculative assets, which tells you this is being treated as infrastructure exposure, not a lottery ticket. Even Ripple's public silence at key moments is data. Institutions do not over-communicate during sensitive positioning phases. They let regulators talk, they let retail argue, and they keep building, signing, testing, and integrating. And when you see former regulators, ex-central bankers, and financial insiders rotating into advisory roles connected to blockchain infrastructure, you should stop asking if XRP matters and start asking when the narrative flips. The most shocking part is this. During uncertainty, assets that threaten the existing system are crushed, assets that can be absorbed into the system are cultivated, and XRP sits right in that dangerous middle ground. Disruptive enough to matter, compliant enough to be usable, and that combination scares people who profit from inefficiency. This is why the messaging is always muddy, why clarity is delayed, and why authority figures speak in riddles, because clarity would cause positioning before permission, and they cannot allow that. Everything you are seeing right now, the hesitation, the doubt, the mixed signals, that is the calm before an informational release, not necessarily a press release, but a realization moment where the data finally aligns for the masses, and by then the risk-reward profile is completely different. This is where you need to decide if you are reacting to fear or reading the signals that institutions have been leaving in plain sight. Honored viewers, now we enter the part most people miss. The catalyst layer, the engine that drives the next major XRP move, and the defensive playbook against the FUD that has been swirling relentlessly. Because if you think the market uncertainty is bad now, wait until the triggers start aligning and everyone else realizes what has been obvious to insiders for months. The first catalyst is regulatory clarity, or at least movement toward it. While mainstream outlets obsess over every rumor from the SEC, Ripple quietly continues its settlements and partnerships, quietly proving that the narrative of XRP being legally toxic is crumbling under scrutiny. Ask yourself, why are former SEC attorneys now participating in crypto advisory roles? Why are global financial bodies actively studying Ripple's network as a model for cross-border liquidity? And why does this exact positioning matter in a macro environment where the IMF, BIS, and even regional central banks are desperate for scalable solutions? This is your first shock point. The regulatory fear is a sword that slices weak hands but strengthens the position of the smart money, and XRP sits directly in the eye of this storm. The second catalyst is institutional adoption, and here is where the FUD defense becomes critical. Because every time a mainstream news outlet spins XRP is down because of legal issues, the reality is completely different. Liquidity corridors are expanding, proof of concept integrations continue, and corporate treasury departments are quietly building XRP-based rails for instant settlements that no headline will ever acknowledge. While Twitter and YouTube scream doom, smart institutional players are quietly accumulating positions, experimenting with liquidity strategies, and setting up nodes that will pay dividends when the market finally internalizes XRP's utility. This is why XRP price may feel constrained while macro uncertainty dominates chatter. It's a controlled setup, not chaos. And the same financial titans who dominated fiat systems are quietly testing the water, hedging against global instability, and preparing to pivot into XRP when timing is optimal. The third catalyst is macroeconomic chaos itself, and here is the part that shocks most people. XRP thrives when traditional systems wobble, inflation spikes, banking instability, cross-border friction, and geopolitical stress. These are exactly the conditions that reveal the shortcomings of legacy systems and simultaneously amplify the demand for what Ripple has already built. Ask yourself, during the last liquidity crunch, who moved fastest? Who had the rails ready? Who could settle billions across jurisdictions instantly? This is not theory. This is XRP in action, quietly proving its relevance while mainstream narratives scream irrelevance. And the FUD, the fear, the noise, it's exactly what insiders use to shake weak hands and keep retail distracted while the actual positioning and accumulation happens behind the scenes. The final piece is timing. Prepare for shock. Because when all these catalysts converge, the narrative will flip instantly, and retail will be forced to recognize XRP not as a speculative token, but as a strategic liquidity tool, a systemically relevant asset, and one of the few that bridges the old world of banks and the new world of crypto. When this happens, volatility will spike, the headlines will catch up, and the institutions already positioned will capitalize while latecomers scramble. This is the precise moment you want to be awake, aware, and strategically placed, not panicking because the market refuses to behave like a textbook asset. Esteemed viewers, now we arrive at the most critical segment, the price justification and the final warning, because everything we've dissected so far converges here. And if you ignore this, you will be caught flat-footed when the market finally reacts, because XRP is not behaving like a normal cryptocurrency. It is being measured, tested, and strategically positioned by entities that don't make mistakes. Let's break this down logically yet brutally. XRP's price is artificially suppressed, yes, controlled, yes, but not permanently. This is a setup, not a collapse. When liquidity corridors expand, regulatory risk diminishes, and institutional adoption is acknowledged, the market will immediately reprice XRP, and I'm talking exponential moves that will leave retail and mainstream media in disbelief. Ask yourself, does it make sense that a token tied to real-time cross-border settlement, backed by enterprise adoption, and referenced by global financial authorities, should trade at mere fractions compared to its actual utility? Absolutely not. Price is lagging function, and function is what insiders are trading on, not candle charts. Consider the math and the adoption logic. Hundreds of billions of dollars flow through international corridors every day. Ripple already has partnerships and technology deployed that can tap even a fraction of that liquidity, and when those flows start being tokenized, XRP's demand curve shifts dramatically. It's not speculative hype, it's structural demand. And structural demand does not get printed on Twitter or YouTube. It materializes quietly, then erupts. Banks, hedge funds, and liquidity providers are already testing scenarios where XRP acts as the bridge asset, and when settlement volumes increase, price follows liquidity, not sentiment. The final warning is brutal but necessary. If you are sitting on the sidelines dismissing XRP as just another altcoin while ignoring regulatory signals, institutional positioning, and macro catalysts, you are exposing yourself to being left behind when the wave finally hits. Prepare mentally, financially, and strategically, because the market's revaluation of XRP will be faster than anyone expects, and by then, indecision will be punished. WTF. The implications are staggering. An asset quietly integrated into global liquidity networks, poised to absorb displaced capital from inefficient fiat systems, controlled volatility until the precise moment of recognition, and a global financial system hungry for alternatives, all pointing to the same inevitable conclusion. XRP is not just in focus, it is becoming unavoidable. And this is why every moment of hesitation, every news cycle filled with fear, is an opportunity for those paying attention, because once clarity breaks, the move will not just be significant, it will redefine the conversation about crypto's role in the real financial world. Act now, watch the signals, understand the mechanics, because XRP's moment is not coming, it is already here, quietly, strategically, and powerfully. Honored viewers, as we close this deep dive, here is the truth the mainstream will never tell you. XRP is not a gamble. It is a strategically positioned asset at the intersection of regulation, institutional adoption, and macroeconomic necessity, and everything we've unpacked, from regulatory shifts, institutional accumulation, liquidity patterns, to global macro catalysts, points to a reality most people are blind to. This is the calm before recognition, the quiet setup before a narrative flip, and the precise moment where knowledge, awareness, and timing create outsized opportunities. Do not underestimate the power of structural demand versus retail panic. Do not ignore the signals hidden in plain sight. And do not confuse noise for risk when the real risk is inaction. Remember, every moment the mainstream media pushes fear, every headline questioning XRP's relevance, every pundit doubting its future, is a layer masking the actual story. XRP is quietly shaping the next phase of digital finance, bridging legacy institutions and the blockchain world, and positioning itself for systemic impact. If you walk away today with one takeaway, let it be this: pay attention, connect the dots, and understand that XRP's relevance is not speculative. It is structural, inevitable, and historically unprecedented. This is your moment to observe, analyze, and prepare, because once the market fully internalizes the catalysts we've covered, the window to strategically act will be narrow, and only those who recognize the signals early will benefit. Stay alert, stay informed, and remember, the truth about XRP is unfolding quietly, but the impact will be loud, undeniable, and impossible to ignore. The market is watching, the institutions are moving, and XRP is in the eye of the storm. Make sure you are positioned to see it through, because the story is only just beginning.